we're here with Wesley Parker, the owner of Parker Eco Pest Control, one of the top pest control companies in Seattle. Really excited to speak with her. So Wesley, just to kick things off, can you give us a little background on yourself and the business that you run?
So we are mostly residential, though we do some commercial pest control business. And we've really focused on eco-friendly solutions. I find that really resonates with the client base here in the Seattle area, and it's what we feel good about offering. My husband and I run the business together. We have a pretty small team, but I think, we might not be the biggest, but we're the best.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think running a business with your partner is really cool, and an interesting way to approach it. How long has Parker Eco Pest Control been around for? When did y'all create this?
We started in 2016, so gosh, 8 years now, almost, something like that.
Nice. Cool. And can you tell us more about the key services that you all offer? Is there a certain type of pest that you specialize in? If I have ants or rodents or raccoons or anything in between, can I call you all up? Would love to hear more about kind of what you guys specialize in.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that differentiates us is our focus on using environmentally friendly solutions. So any pest control business in the Pacific Northwest is going to be doing odorous house ants and rats. That's where 90% of the demand is. So I don't care how you run your business; those are the calls you're going to get. But I think what makes us different is that we really focus on trying to use poison-free alternatives to rodent problems. Most pest control businesses will just put out rat poison, sign you up on some kind of recurring plan, and then just try to bill your credit card as under the radar as possible while continuing to set out poison on a regular basis. And we focus on sealing up entry points, physically trapping rodents, and trying to do something that doesn't have as many negative effects on the environment and actually solves your issue rather than just sort of dragging it out and trying to continue milking that subscription fee.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Putting the kind of customer first. Um, for those that don't know, myself included, when I think of pest control, I think of a big truck with a lot of chemicals on it that are probably pretty dangerous, potentially to humans. What inspired you all to choose the organic, eco-friendly route when, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, I'm assuming those chemicals or those products are more expensive than the cheaper, maybe more dangerous chemicals. So what inspired that decision with you and your partner to go that route opposed to maybe using more traditional chemicals to treat these sites?
Yeah, it's funny because there's definitely a difference in the products that we use. But one of the main things that I think actually sets us apart is more like the philosophy. For example, most pest control businesses are super focused on recurring revenue. So they have salesmen who come door to door who try to sign you up on a service and just get you on recurring service. You may not need recurring service. You may not need products supplied to your home every 3 months, right? So the philosophy that we bring to the table is, can we solve this for you? Not, can we continue to make money off of you as long as possible? And you see that in the products that we use, like you said, but also like we don't have a sales team. We don't have commission paid out to our staff. We've just tried to structure the business so that our only incentive is to do what's right for you and solve your problem. And we just kind of believe that for better or for worse, if we treat customers well and we sell them what they want to buy, which is generally a solution, that they will continue to come back. The ants aren't going anywhere in the world, but we'll continue to pick up business, even if it's not from the same guy every 3 months.
Yeah. 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 Okay. And so you don't have sales folks that are going door to door, trying to drum up business for you, right? So, okay. And I've talked to, we had an interview for the Workbench with another, pest control owner who has a background in door to door sales. So that's how they drum up their
Most of them
business.
do.
Um,
Yep.
yeah. And so if you're not doing what sounds like the more traditional method, how are you driving, top of funnel new customer acquisition for the business?
A lot of it is relying on my background in branding. So
Mhm.
before starting this business, I worked doing like branding and marketing business consulting at an agency in the Seattle area. And so I was able to build us, a website that communicates what we offer in a really effective way. And we convert on our website super, super well. And then remember, we just treat people really well. So we have very high return rates and we have very good online reviews, all of which are from real humans and they tell their neighbors. And so, it's maybe not the fastest way to grow a business. Certainly hiring a fleet of young men to drive around in subdivisions and knock on doors every July would get us more customers in the short term. But we live here. We're going to be here for the long term. We're not trying to build the business and sell it and go buy a yacht. We're just trying to
Yeah.
serve our community.
And that's a really big theme that I've heard in my conversations so far for the Workbench is authentically engaging with the community as a means to build and sustain your business. And that when you're in a community, particularly with a local home service business like pest control, and you build relationships with folks, that's such a differentiator because you're authentically engaging with people and then you have a solution to a problem they may face. And that's a really good long-term strategy for building a sustainable business. You hit on something that I think is really interesting. You had a long career as a marketing manager, from what I can tell, at a few different companies, including an agency. And a theme I've also seen is people going through college, getting their BA like you did, and maybe having a trajectory into a more corporate 9 to 5
Mm-hmm.
career, which can have great money and great benefits. So what drove that decision for you to shift from a more traditional corporate marketing career into building a home service business?
My husband. he's he's
Yeah.
my business partner. He's my life partner, and he's my
Yeah.
favorite part of my job. And he always told me, "You work so hard. Why are you working for other people?" So, I wouldn't say that I had like entrepreneurship in my blood. I'm probably a pretty conservative person when it comes to like the way I run the finances of the business and the way I structure our growth and stuff like that. But my husband was working doing like log cabin restoration and construction. So he was out there dealing with like termites and carpenter ants and stuff like that. And he was like, I think I could probably figure this out. And I was like, okay, let me do some math. And I heard on KUOW, which is like our local NPR affiliate. I was driving home one day thinking about the fact that, my husband really wanted a job where he worked for himself and he wanted to work outside. And we'd been talking about arborists and him being a forest ranger and all kinds of different like, career trajectory type stuff because we were in our mid-20s at the time and he was having a quarter life crisis. um, and on the radio, I heard them interview another pest control guy who runs his own outfit in the Seattle area. And he was talking about how many calls he gets per day. And I was like, gosh, I wonder what the barriers to entry are for pest control. I wonder what the insurance is like. I wonder what the licensing is like. I wonder what like the average cost per acquisition is. What's the lifetime value of a customer? Like I just started poking around. And like a lot of people who are in the private equity space who figured this out and who, I'm not the first person to have this realization that it's fairly easy to enter and has a good revenue base if you can figure it out. So we just said, what the hell? And I kept my job so that we could pay the rent. And we set everything up in terms of like our licensing and our exams and stuff like that. My husband studied his butt off with zero experience. He's also really smart though, so he has a leg up in that respect. And yeah, we just said what the heck, and we did it.
Love it. Love it. And that's another big theme because a lot of the people that are reading this and listening to this interview are thinking about starting a home service business and maybe want to shift careers or work for themselves. And I think something that scares people is that barrier to entry when it comes to insurance and costs and equipment. So if you were talking to yourself when you were first starting Parker Eco Pest Control, what would you say are like the bare minimum things you need to get started and things that you're like, hey, you could actually wait until like your year or two? What are those barriers and those things you need in place to really get started in 2024 with a business like this?
Yeah, well, obviously there's the legal side of it, which is going to depend on your state. What kind of licensing is required for you. And in some states, it's absolutely nothing. So you can just hang up your shingle and go for it. But in other states, you're going to have to follow the law and take an exam and do a bunch of paperwork and stuff. So that can be intimidating for people, especially if you speak English as a second language, or there's reasons why paperwork mountain is scary, and there's valid reasons. The other thing is getting a work vehicle. So like we had an old Toyota that we traded in. It wasn't even that old, but we traded it in for an even older, even shittier cargo van. And I remember as we drove it off the lot, I was like, God, I hope this is the right move, because that car ran and we don't really know if this one's going to run for any longer. We bought it from some shady guy. Basically, we did a straight trade of our old Toyota with this cargo van. So that was a leap of faith, and definitely necessary. You need a vehicle that can, carry all of your equipment and stuff. You cannot be doing that in your family minivan. And then you need to have a really good web presence, which is probably the toughest barrier for most people who don't have marketing experience. Like, you can hire people to build your website and everything, but do you trust those people? Did you just find them on the internet? Are they just going to take your money? Like, there's it can be difficult to find somebody who can do a good job at a startup price, that you can trust. And it is
Mhm.
absolutely critical, because that's how people find businesses these days, is on the internet. Your friends and your family will only get you so far. And it's not like construction, where your average ticket might be $5,000, $20,000. You just need to win a couple big jobs to get the ball rolling. Pest control, you're doing onesie twosies. You're doing $100 here and $300 there, and it's hard to pay the rent on onesie twosies. So you need to take advantage of the internet in a pretty meaningful way to be successful with pest control. And that's probably the hardest part.
Got it. Okay, so it sounds like the two big things are a vehicle and then web presence, mainly a really good, well-designed website.
Mhm.
Are those the two key? Okay. And then what about chemicals and tools, right? If you're a window cleaner, you may need certain tools for that. If you're doing lawn care, lawnmower, leaf blower, what are the 2 to 3 main tools or chemicals that someone wanting to start out might need?
Yeah, it's honestly not that difficult. You can figure out what kinds of pests are problems. If you have experience in pest control already, like you've already been working as a technician somewhere else, you kind of already know what are the main calls you're getting. So you'll be able to say, okay, most of my revenue this time of year in my area is going to be off of carpenter ants, and I know that I need to buy this main product to handle that, or have a range of 2 or 3 products. And getting a pesticide supplier to sell you stuff, again, depends on your state, but it's not that typical. And stocking your van probably is going to cost you about $3,000 in terms of like ladders, dusters, sprayers, your respirators, your apiary suit if you're going to be doing wasp work, like all those bits and pieces. And you can buy those as you go. So you don't need to throw down $3,000 to outfit an entire vehicle from jump. Um, One other thing I would recommend is decaling your vehicle as a form of, I would say, free advertising, but you're going to have to pay to do it. Like, getting a whole van wrapped is maybe $2,000, which is a lot of money. So, like, our first van, I bought vinyl, and then I used an X-Acto knife, and I X-Acto knifed out our logo and all the decals by hand on our dining room table, and it took forever, but it cost like $30. And we got so many calls
Wow.
off of that. So it was a really big pain, and I'm not artistically inclined. Like, I had to like shine a light and trace, and it was horrific. But
Yeah.
I would say decaling your vehicle is very important, and you can pay money to have it done super well, or you can just kind of squeak it out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got to be scrappy in those early days. And the decals, I think, make a lot of sense for the pest control or service businesses in general, because that truck is out there on the road every day marketing for you. And you said something interesting about how technicians will know what calls they're getting in their area and the chemicals that may be needed and the products that may be needed to serve those type of calls. So it sounds like an interesting path could maybe be go work as a technician at a bigger, more established company for a year and learn the basics and learn the area, and then roll off and create your own company. What would you say to an approach like that for a new entrepreneur?
Pretty much everybody that I talked to when I said that we were starting a pest control business said that my husband, Chris, should go get a job as a tech first. And he
Okay.
flat refused. He was like, I'm absolutely not going to do that.
Yeah.
He said, if I have to go work for somebody else, I'm just not going to do
Yeah.
it. So, um, but I would say that's a very standard piece of advice. Now, if you're like my husband and you're not willing to do it, you have to be willing to learn. And I mean, we did a tremendous amount of free work when we started because we made a lot of mistakes, you know? And eventually you find a pesticide distributor who's got a salesman that you can kind of use as a teacher, right? You can say, hey, I've been using XYZ and I did this and this and that. And he'll say, oh, let me sell you this instead, or you can try that instead. University of YouTube is a fabulous resource. It's going to depend a lot on your region, right? Because advice for Arizona is not the same as advice for Oregon, et cetera.
Right.
But yeah, the technical side of the job is something that you have to be willing to do for free for a while to figure out your ass from your elbow.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's true for a lot of entrepreneurial endeavors, proving value in a free or low cost way, and then learning as you go. So a big topic for home and local service businesses is hiring, and different folks have told me that there's different challenges with hiring for different types of people, whether it's back office, marketing folks, or technicians. How do you approach hiring and finding great talent for Parker Eco Pest Control?
Number one, be a good boss. Like people quit bosses, not jobs. So you need
Preach.
to look in the mirror and figure out what your faults are and how you can be a better boss. Number two, pay them as much as you possibly can. And I know that that's easy to say and hard to do because when you're starting, you just don't have any money, and you have to be willing to go without so that you can pay your staff more. But that I firmly believe is the best way to go. You might say to yourself, I can pay people less and they might not stick around as long, but it'll be worth it in the end. There are a lot of hidden costs to churn. Hiring people, training people, all that stuff is extremely expensive. And just because you don't see it on your payroll line item every month does not mean that you are not spending that money. So so the question is, how do I pay people more? How can I pay people the most in my area? And that I think comes back to a baseline in business management. Because if you're not spending money over here, you can spend it on your people. So for me, I mean, I always tell my team, I refuse to spend money on anything except for you. So, if it's something that's going to make your job easier, faster, safer, or if it's your payroll, I will generally spend it. If it's anything else, generally not. So some people will tell you like have a bunch of Christmas parties and really boost morale and stuff like that. I don't agree. I think that people would rather have good health care. So we are very bare bones. We run a super, super lean operation. Like people who have seen our books will ask me where stuff is. And I'm like, it just doesn't exist. We just refuse to spend money on that. And that is why we pay our staff some of the highest wages, if not the highest wages in the state.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I love that. Investing in your people makes it sounds like it makes for great employees and great team members, and then comes back to you when I'm sure they're excited and doing great work. What are some of those categories that you feel aren't really necessary for a business like yours, where someone else may overspend, that then allows you to pay your employees so well?
I really hate spending on Google ads, for example. Like when you're starting, it's very difficult because you don't have any business. And so you feel pretty much willing to spend money on anything and everything to try and get more business, right? And it's just a very dangerous spiral. But then there's also stuff like our equipment purchases. Every single quarter, I will go through every line item by vendor and see where we spend the most money. And then I will just see if we can do it cheaper. So, like our uniforms, for example, we used to hire somebody, get their sizes, and then order their uniforms, which meant that we were doing uniform runs of like under 20 pieces several times a year. Well, what if we were able to just cut that in half? What if we took the average size runs that we get in a given year and the average number of uniforms that we get in a given year, and we bulk order and drop all that money at once, but spend half of it, and then we stock it and pull sizes as we go? There you go. We just pulled $3,000 out of our butts. So how can you just look at your expenses and ruthlessly brainstorm ways to spend less money?
Love that. That's great. Okay. And then looking to the future, what are the future plans for the business? Any other big milestones or goals you have over the next year or three, as you continue to grow Parker Eco Pest Control?
Well, in the theme of saving money, I would really like to stop paying rent. So we are actively looking to purchase some physical warehouse space so that we can pay ourselves rent instead of paying
Okay.
somebody else. And we are trying to continue expanding our footprint up and down the I-5 corridor. So we've gone all the way up to Canada just as of last March, and then we are hoping to head south in the near future as soon as we've got a crew that we feel good about expanding behind.
Great. And last question for those listening that may be considering about making the leap into entrepreneurship and want to start a home service business. What's one piece of advice you would give someone that's thinking about creating a home service business?
It's very hard to do alone. That's tainted because it's coming from my perspective, but I often think about how privileged we are as a couple that we can bend and flex with each other. And just the fact that I was able to keep working and like at a 9 to 5 job and pay the bills while we grew the business was huge. If you don't have a partner who can do that, it's going to be much more difficult to invest your time and your energy in growing your business. So the partner privilege, not just marriage partners, but a business partner, somebody that you can sympathize with, empathize with, bounce ideas off of. And I think it's even better if that person disagrees with you a lot. Don't partner with somebody who thinks the same way you do. Partner with somebody that's going to tell you you're wrong and that you can debate and come to a better end product with.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, having a partner I think it makes things a lot, not easier, but it allows you to stay in it a little longer when you have someone working with you by the side. And there's a funny quote that's like, behind every great entrepreneur is a spouse or a partner with like a 9 to 5 job and health insurance. And I think that's a
Yeah.
common approach for maintaining things while you get a business off the ground. So thank you, Wesley, for coming on. Where can folks find you or your business online, social media, website, etc.?
Yeah, ParkerEcoPestControl.com. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it'll get you there. Or if you just Google Pest Control Seattle, you should be at the top.
Perfect. All right. Thank you for coming on today. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Bryan.